The moment you finish, if you want to take another swing, just like a pitch in a pitching machine, the next one is also going to be over the plate. You get another swing. And we have found that even on skills that our clients have very, very little training on, if you can introduce a skill in the studio and within 3 tries, they're not only doing it, they're doing it well.
If your sales team is still practicing on real prospects, you're burning trust and budget. What if they could rehearse, refine, and self-correct using AI before the first call ever goes out?
Welcome to From Leads to Leases, a CCR growth podcast that helps senior living providers transform their complex challenges into opportunities. Listen in for stories from industry leaders, innovative strategies, and insights. And with our expertise, learn how to increase occupancy faster, guaranteed.
Welcome back to another episode of From Leads to Leases, the podcast that dives deep into the senior living and senior care industries, bringing you insights, strategies, and stories from the experts at the forefront of innovation, leadership, and care. I'm your host, Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth. For those of you who don't know about us, CCR Growth is a full-service marketing and growth agency that's exclusive to the senior living industry. And through this podcast, I'm here to guide you through the evolving landscape of senior care, exploring the innovations, strategies, and leadership insights that are shaping the future of the industry. Whether you're a provider, a caregiver, or an industry leader, this show is here to help you make informed decisions and create meaningful impact. All right. Today's guest is John Greaves, owner of Next Step Sales Management and the builder behind one of the most exciting innovations in sales enablement, the Senior Living Sales Practice Studio, which is an AI-driven platform that helps sales teams practice high-stakes conversations, improve performance, and build confidence before they ever speak with a prospect. John spent over 20 years in senior living sales, coaching, and management, and his new tools are giving portfolios a smarter, scalable way to support their teams without burning out regionals or wasting real leads on training. So, John, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you, Jerry. I'm glad to be here.
This is such a cool product. I mean, we've talked several times about it, and every time we talk, I just drum up more and more questions. I'm just excited to share this with our audience. And I know all the sales professionals that are listening are just going to eat this up. I just want to start just talking about the sales lane. So you said something early on in our conversation that stuck with me. You said, choose a lane and own it. Why did you choose sales training, and why senior living specifically?
Senior living was an incredibly fortunate moment for me more than 20 years ago. I was a creative director, and in the larger field of product marketing and design. And I discovered senior living through being hired as a creative director for a small consulting firm in our field. And I got a great education at the hands of some very, very smart people. And so senior living was a field that I fell in love with early. And I can't see really working in any other field but senior living from here on in. The people that I work with are just too fabulous.
I swear, I hear that from every guest, and I totally agree. I mean, that we fell in love with this industry. We started with one client in this industry and fell in love with it and just never left. And that was 14 years ago. You've been in sales, marketing, and management. Why is sales training still the most misunderstood investment in the industry?
Well, in part because historically it's been very, very difficult using traditional metrics to know whether your sales training is all that effective. Traditional metrics rely on counting up activities and then calculating a ratio of, okay, well, how many of those activities resulted in something valuable, like a deposit or a move-in? And activity-based management is notoriously difficult to correlate to actual success. When we layered training on with a common language where you were measuring not activities as your primary metric, but successful outcomes, well, now you have the basis for managing to an outcome that's measurable, that's objective. And so that next step sales management common language is one of those areas that allowed me to pick sales training as the lane, because now I had the framework for being able to demonstrate to my clients, here's your before and here's your after. You can see it on a dashboard. It's right here in front of your face. And by the way, it correlates very well to actual results in terms of move-ins and occupancy. So that was a comfortable lane for me to choose because I knew I could create a very successful, measurable outcome for my clients.
Yeah, measurable is a key word. I think it's really hard a lot of times in business in general with all the intangibles, right? When you have something that you can measure, here's where we're at, here's what we invested in, and here's the end result. I think it's a win-win for everybody. Now that you delved into the sales training piece, the next thing you kind of talked about was role clarity within that scope. So why is role clarity foundational and what breaks when it's missing?
So in senior living, we can be a little notorious about saying, well, everybody wears all the hats and
Yep.
everybody's in sales and marketing. And that's a recipe for a lot of mud on an org chart. My general approach in the sales operation is to choose what do you really wish for your sales counselors to be proficient at? Where do you want them to spend their time and their energy? And how are you going to measure that? Because a sales hour is a very precious thing. And to discover belatedly that your salesperson has instead been operating as an activities director or as a resident handholder instead of your operations team, you realize, oh my gosh, we've just lost an immense amount of sales capacity that we can't get back. So role clarity is incredibly important. And a sales counselor, from my perspective, you've got four things you can do that are very valuable. Face-to-face conversations with families who are in the
Mhm.
decision process. Second most valuable thing you can do is schedule those conversations. The third most valuable thing, if you have an outreach component, is building those reciprocal referral relationships again in face-to-face conversation. And the fourth one is simply scheduling those meetings. If you're not doing one of those four things on behalf of your community, question whether that's what you should be doing because no one else fills the revenue bucket but sales. Everybody else dips out of it. And if you in a sales capacity, if you're not actively filling up that revenue bucket, it's going to go dry.
Sure. What do you think are the signals or the red flags the community's asking sales counselors to wear too many hats, and how would you recommend fixing that?
First and foremost, you have a CRM system, and
Mhm.
that CRM system is designed to bank several things. One, it banks the effort that your team is going toward to fill your building. Two, if it's set up appropriately, it's also tracking measurable successful outcomes. Third, it's a bank account for depositing anyone who ever says maybe. If you are not depositing data in your CRM actively every single day, people who say not yes, not no, but maybe, that's where your lead generation dollars then have an opportunity to come back and pay you later. And so, red flags that I look for is a salesperson who says, I didn't have time to make
Mm.
those entries into my CRM, or I didn't have time to get on the phone and get people out of the database and back up on my sales board with an appointment setting call. I was, too busy helping the McGillicuddies move in, or I was trying to save a move out because I have an incentive based on high occupancy. And so if I can save a move out, well, shoot, that's as good as a move in, isn't it? And my response to that is, oh no, it is not. Move outs or operations, you are sales. You fill the building with new people, new decisions. And yeah, so we pay attention to that, certainly.
I want to talk about the practice studio. I know I mentioned it in the intro. What a cool product. Walk us through the practice studio. How does it work? What gaps are you solving?
So if we go with that premise that a sales counselor is at their best when they are having a conversation with a prospect and ideally moving a prospect as a guide toward a good decision, whether it's their building or another place. It is on us as organizations to ensure that that sales counselor is prospect ready. If you're practicing on prospects, you're probably blowing it a certain amount of your lead generation dollars. And so our thought was we now have the technology to allow an AI persona to stand in for a prospect and sort of like a major league hitter stepping into a batter's box on a major league field, If they haven't spent some time in a batting cage ahead of time learning how to handle a 98-mile-per-hour fastball, they're going to make a lot of strikes. And so this is the batting cage for a sales counselor. You can get in, get your bad swings out of the way before it really matters. And that's it's an important thing that we can now offer. It also expands the reach of a regional sales leader. That regional salesperson often is responsible for setting the standard of performance and the standard of excellence across an entire team. But generally speaking, they have very little evidence about which people on their team are struggling and why. And that makes it difficult to target someone for performance development. And I'm not talking about a PIP or performance improvement plan. I'm talking about the true sense of developing someone's proficiency, their value, reinforcing what they're good at, pointing out where their gaps are. The practice studio is a way for us to gather that data objectively and to give sales counselors the confidence to enter sales conversations knowing they're doing it in a way that's consistent with the company's values, that is aware of the company's points of difference, that they have a story or a message around each of the objections that your particular market may face. And they can do that because they've done it in a practice studio. They have a recording, they have a score, and they've been able to take several swings to dial in their messaging and get very good at what you want from them. Oftentimes, if a sales counselor is avoiding difficult conversations, it's because they don't feel prepared.
Mhm.
And this is a way to get rid of that call avoidance because the system has said, no, 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 you're good. You've got this. So it's exciting.
How does it measure the gaps or score progress?
So if you broke down the deliverables from any sales counselor, if you broke it down
Mm.
into a series of either conversation types or even segments of conversations, and if you associated a success outcome with each of those, for instance, an initial inquiry has a success metric, and that would be activation. Did this inquiry choose to schedule some time with you for the next step in this conversation or decision process? Typically, it's going to be that initial tour, but not always. If you have the ability to say, I'd like you to conduct a inquiry conversation with this person, we'll call this one Marge McGillicuddy. Marge is inquiring on her own behalf. Now, Marge is a persona. She's not a real person, but she does have some very real attributes that she's going to cue when she's doing this conversation. She has a backstory. She has concerns. She has worries. She also has some objections and some beliefs about what senior living is, which may not be so.
Mhm.
Your job is to introduce yourself, your role, your process, build the value of that next step, and asking her to trust you to take it with you. If you're successful, then you're going to not only have a meeting scheduled, but you'll also have a little feedback report based on your scoring rubric. And that's going to discuss, did you clearly say your name? Did you clearly introduce your role in the conversation? Did you introduce the community fully? Did you build the case for that next step? Or did you just say, I won't talk to you until you come in for a tour? Those those little bits of information are all criteria within the rubric that the scoring system is going to take a look at point by point. It'll also look at some overall communication skills like, was your language clear? Was it comfortable? Did you express curiosity? It will also, as a third level of analysis, listen to your tone. And if your tone is hurried or dismissive or impatient versus determined, comfortable, confident, that system is a third level of AI analysis. And it's not paying attention to the words, it's paying attention to the tension in your voice. All of those things are being calculated during the assessment. And after you complete that assessment, it's going to pop up within a few moments and give you some very specific feedback on how to do better. Now, this is where the system is kind of cool.
It is cool.
March has infinite forgiveness. The moment you finish, if you want to take another swing, just like a pitch in a pitching machine, the next one is also going to be over the plate. but it doesn't have any memory of what you just did. If you make a bad first impression, Marge is not going to hold it against you. You get another swing. And we have found that between the first attempt, second attempt, and third attempt, if someone is reading the feedback report against their score, they're leaping forward and leaping forward again. And we're seeing that even on skills that our clients have very, very little training on, if you can introduce a skill in the studio and within 3 tries, they're not only doing it, they're doing it well because the system is giving them immediate feedback and they can take another swing right away. That's a unique feature, and I think it's very, very valuable to help give you clarity on whether your team is moving forward. Now, you can string those kinds of conversations together. The initial inquiry, perhaps the voicemail you leave to an e-lead, perhaps a discovery conversation against one of your targets of discovery. Perhaps it's an objections conversation where you can acknowledge, clarify, test, and then maybe solve an objection, or that all-important database dial. Those are all individual conversations that you can string together in a learning path. We'll call it prospect ready. And if someone can get passing scores across each of those conversation types and across an array of personas, maybe it's the prospect, maybe it's their adult daughter, maybe it's an out-of-town son, maybe it's the competitor. But if you can get those conversations down, you can then go to your organization and say, I'm prospect ready, I've onboarded. And the organization can say to their investor pool or to their board of directors, look at the evidence we have that we are onboarding systematically against our company values. We're not just going out to competitors and try to pick off their good people. We're able to develop wonderful people right here using a system like this.
I know the system can be customized to every single
Yes.
sales team. So it's not some cookie cutter thing where everybody's following the same sales playbook. How do sales leaders typically score their team? I mean, is it they're going to work with this tool until they hit a certain number or a certain grade and then they're prospect ready, then they move on to working with actual prospects, or how does that typically work?
So certainly as an onboarding tool, Prospect Ready is the first one that you would want to get through in terms of
Yeah.
learning paths. But there are also learning paths that we've built and pre-populated around referral ready. What does it look like to have those third most valuable things, those referral source conversations? We have one specific to memory care because the prospects, the objections, the questions that they ask, the points of difference are a little bit different on the memory care side. And then we also have a learning path that amps up the speed of the pitch. It's called proficiency review. And the
Like
attitude,
the lightning round?
yeah. So you can adjust the attitude of a persona on a per conversation basis from easy, like trustful or collaborative or curious, but we know not all prospects come to us that way. So you can adjust to someone perhaps who's overwhelmed or who's frustrated or impatient. Maybe they are downright rude. Sales counselors run into folks like that. And if you haven't prepared on how to acknowledge what you're hearing from somebody, how to accommodate what they're feeling, well, then you're probably just trying to overwhelm their feelings instead of acknowledging and working with them, which means you're never really dropping the temperature of the conversation before you really try to make progress. So the system is designed to help a sales counselor with those skills of acknowledgement and accommodation so that they can really have a productive and successful conversation. That's an interesting bit of programming we had to do with the prompt to start with a difficult mood and then shift based on what the sales counselor does. So you can change them from rude to curious, but you have to do your job right. And it's not easy, but it's a very important conversational skill.
I can imagine for memory care too, that would be so vital because those conversations are so highly charged and emotional. People have a real difficult time dealing with sales teams when they're not a place where they even want to be sold to. They're upset usually about their loved one and they're having to make a pretty quick decision and they're feeling pressured to do it. So I can imagine this would help ease people through that.
These are crucial conversations. I mean,
Yeah.
and the book says it all. I mean, a conversation that has very high stakes, that has the potential for an emotional response, and that has a likely difference of opinion. Those require us as leaders and as humans to simply be at our best. And again, if we haven't practiced that and developed those skills, then we're really trying to practice on prospects, and that's a very expensive proposition.
Yeah. Is it voice led or is it written? I mean, because I know that people obviously type and talk differently
Yeah. Yeah.
through the keyboard than they do audibly.
So there are two modes of session. A session is simply a back and forth, and that's composed of turns. I say something, you say something. So you're
Mhm.
talking to a person. It's not a chorus, it's not a group. You're talking to one person. And in practice mode, you can take your time. You can look up the answer. You can ask the system for a hint. You can type it or you can say it, but you tell the system when it's their turn. And so you can do a back and forth to get your messaging right, but that's not going to yield a score. That's not going to yield anything but some good feedback. If you go instead to assessment mode, a couple things happen. One, you don't have access to the playbook while you're in assessment mode, and you don't have access to any insight into the persona. You just have to listen for what they're saying. And it's a live mic conversation. It's a back and forth. A
Okay.
pregnant pause is enough for the system to start taking over. So you want to be careful, about how you speak. And it is a back and forth that can take a few minutes, depending on the nature of the conversation, but it is very realistic.
I did a survey last year asking 35,000 sales professionals in senior living how long they typically spend with a qualified prospect, and over 75% of them said 15 hours or more. Do you think a tool like this would cut down on the time and efficiency somebody has in that sales process?
This tool, among a few other management tools, has the power to compress sales cycles. One, because we're helping guide the sales counselor to a successful outcome to the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. We know when they don't ask for the next step. And anytime an executive comes to us and says, "We just need you to teach our people to be better closers." Well, that's a bit of a red flag, because closing in sale, that's actually a little component of a sale. The opening is far more critical to get right. Framing your role, framing what a success looks like, helping the prospect understand that they are part of a decision process that is a process. If you can string appointments together, one to the next, that has an enormous impact on tightening up and closing your sales cycle. If you are structuring your conversations to yield the value of a next step and to gain a mutual commitment, then you move away from presentation style selling and toward curiosity, because you need to understand, what do they wish to do next? What is important to them? And if you're using your curiosity and your calendar as your two great sales tools, you're going to have a lot more success, and it's measurable. That's one of the things that we look for in our campaigns, is that tightened up sales cycle as your active prospect count goes up.
I know the system is built on multiple platforms and LLMs. I mean, how do you even go about developing something like this? Where did that start?
You start with somebody very, very smart. My developer is Vidal Grapera, and his engineer is Johnny Avila, and these are both U.S. based guys. Vidal is in Burlingame, California. He's a developer who's used to AI development, and he's also used to very, very large data sets. His work has been with organizations like Amazon and LinkedIn and Walmart, and so he's used to dealing with a lot of data coming through. Johnny is gifted at AI application development. He has been very, very fast. And this is the Senior Living Sales Practice Studio is a joint venture between Next Step Sales Management and Salesably, which is the broader platform that powers our studio. So I was introduced to Vidal by a colleague of mine, Michael McGowan. He's based in Dublin, and he's a sales trainer like I am. We actually use a very similar language. And He worked initially with Vidal. They got the platform to a spot where they thought it was viable, but it lacked specificity. And so they approached me as the subject matter expert on the senior living sales side. And I got very excited. My wife said it ruined our trip to Europe in some ways because we were there, and my head was in this. It was just so impactful that all I could think about was how I wanted to jump in and go to work. So we started on this in August, September of last year. We put together a pilot program with several portfolios in December into January to try the system out in a group setting. And from that experience, one, we learned a lot about how we wanted the individual studios to set up. Two, we were able to develop a lot of administrative and reporting tools that make setting up a studio reasonably easy. So
Mhm.
each of those participants in that pilot wound up with a corporate branded custom studio. And that's really the way to do it. Unless you're just a single site, you really want your data to be your data, your results to be your results, your stories to be your stories. And so we recommend just do a custom studio. We can have it set up very, very quickly, at least to the point where you can start testing it. And then we can make any adjustments that you want to make as a portfolio to make it your own, building in your band words and phrases, building in your values, making sure that the inquiry matches perhaps your mystery shop score sheet. All of those we can adjust on a per portfolio basis as long as we're doing that custom studio.
Typically in sales training, there's either explaining or there's guided practice. Why do you think guided practice has been missing in most portfolios?
It's interesting, that idea of the edge method. It's an old scout method of explain, demonstrate, guided practice, and then enable so that someone gets experience. In senior living, we've always been able to explain how important it is to do sales well. And we've even been able to demonstrate in a lot of cases just through, hey, listen to this recording or listen to this skit we can do up on stage at our sales meeting. But that doesn't transfer to behavior terribly well. We've always relied on that consultative expert in the sales operation, the regional sales leader, to transfer their knowledge of what it looks like to do a great job down to the sales counselor level. And they can do that through role play. They could traditionally do that through shadowing, but we're in a day and age where a regional salesperson now often has a dozen buildings, and they are simply stretched too thin to give any one sales counselor that level of attention to make sure they're adequately on board. Often that will happen at the expense of other sales counselors. So we believe that person who is setting the standard of performance and who is setting the standard of behavior, we believe we can now help them be objective and expand their role using the practice studio. So that regional can enable guided practice by making assignments or by encouraging you to enroll in a learning path. Perhaps that's part of your onboarding process. They can also give you very targeted assignments based on what they see on your sales board. For instance, if you are having a hard time with an objection about why are we not offering a move-in special? Well, if someone's having a hard time with that, well, you can ask, well, who is giving you a hard time with that? And I was like, well, it was the son. He was a, financial guy. He just really wanted to get the best deal. Like, okay, well, let's go ahead and put you in an assignment in the studio with George McGillicuddy, who fits that profile, and let's make his objection. I want to move in special. And why don't you practice that for a little bit? But by next week, come back to me with an 85 or higher. And if you're having a hard time, let me know. And the system then supports that salesperson as they try to address that performance development gap. The system will let them run through it several times. It gives them a playbook. It gives them the corporate messaging or the home office messaging that fits your brand values. And they come back with that 85 along with recordings that back it up and the feedback reports that show. And now you can move on to the next gap. So I think it's really significant on helping regional sales people manage their teams to a standard of performance that has been very, very difficult to enforce or to support. And now they can because they can be 18 places at once because they've got the studio to back them up.
Yeah.
There's there's this last little feature we built in pretty recently, and that's a coach's report. The system looks not just at one conversation, but it helps one person with analysis of the previous 20 conversations. And it looks for trends, it looks for areas of weakness, it looks for areas of strength, and it gives them a rundown of here's what we're seeing overall as you're growing in this role. In the hands of a good regional director, that gives them a starting place for their conversations. So they're not spending all their time trying to suss out the gaps. They can focus on here are the gaps the system seems to be seeing. What do you want to do about it? And how can I support you?
In that guided practice, you've got tone analysis, you've got story prompts and emotion tracking. What
Yes.
do you think AI can pick up that a human coach might miss or never have time to review?
So the AI is listening in multiple channels that would be very difficult for a real coach to pick up on. I may pick up on tone, but while I'm picking up on tone, I may be missing it on the technical criteria, or I may not be hearing all of your ums and you knows because I'm used to hearing you talk. So I kind of tune them out too. Well, the system will say, hey, your use of filler words is making it difficult for a prospect to really see you as comfortable. So let's work on that. I think it's the multi-channel analysis that you're getting that a human would have a very difficult time to do with. And secondly, is that idea of the persona has infinite forgiveness. It's difficult as a coach to hear the second and third attempt with fresh ears. we're
Hmm.
still we're still processing the first attempt. And
Yeah.
when that happens, you're losing objectivity. Um, and something might get revealed in the third attempt that's very significant. But at that point, you're kind of wiped out. You want to go to lunch. This is a way to get that done on in an offline setting, and you're getting a much more objective feedback.
Efficient too, I can imagine it. Like you said, if it's able to measure all of those things, tone, story prompts, emotion tracking, all at the same time, versus if it was human led, they might pick up on one thing this iteration, another thing the next iteration. It's cutting down on the number of repetitions that somebody has to take in order to recognize, oh, maybe I need to pick up on this that the prospect said, and I also need to change my tone because it's not very sympathetic or empathetic to their situation, something like that. You can pick up in one turn. That's a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean this business of asking AI to be like humans. I mean that's on the prospect facing stuff that some fabulous companies are working on. They're really trying hard to say, I want the AI to sound and act like a human because I don't want to pay a human to do this. And I'm more interested in helping humans do what I want humans to do, represent our organizations, represent our product, and also represent the best interests of the prospect. I want to enable them to do really well at that. So in the case of this platform, the sales practice platform, we're asking the AI to go far beyond what a human can do and embrace its strengths. Now, it didn't write the sales rubric. It did not write the explainer. No, we did that, but it is able to perceive and process much more information much more fast and to compose a feedback report that's both comprehensive and actionable. And now you have a written record. A regional salesperson, you just simply could not do that. You don't have that. You don't have enough hours in the day, and you're not that fast.
There's one more feature too I wanted to ask you about real quick. The storytelling module.
Yeah.
Why do why do great sales counselors need more than just scripts?
So, humans communicate best as storytellers. We've been
Hmm.
using stories to impart lessons since before we had written words. I mean, we told stories on cave paintings. I have found that a story can have far more impact in terms of its ability to be memorable and its ability to paint a picture of what life is really like, to either overcome an objection or to impart an insight into senior living, something that we find valuable, but it's not immediately apparent, or to help someone understand the importance of a point of difference, something that we do in our community that nobody else in this market does. So points of difference, objections, and insights can all be the subject of a great story. But sales counselors themselves, even if you go through an exercise, can sometimes struggle to string it together in a way that is both impactful, concise. So we built a story builder module into the studio that runs a sales counselor just through a series of prompts. So what is this thing you want to tell a story about? And then tell me someone, a real person in your life for whom it's a big deal. And what was something memorable about this person? Just tell me a few things about them that would allow me to recognize them in a room full of strangers if you weren't there to introduce me. And then lastly, what was the lesson that they learned? What was the before and after? What was revealed? And of course, what's a next step that would be appropriate for someone who thought this was an important thing to explore? What could you do to either reinforce it or reveal it in real life with a next step appointment? That prompt, that series of questions, allows someone to just speak into the microphone or type what they want to type. And what the system then does is it composes a 1 minute summary or 150 words that compresses that story into a very digestible story, or a longer form 300-word version of it.
Mhm.
You can tag that story now with the objection that it addresses or the point of difference that it reveals. It goes into your organization's repository of stories, which means it's now
So
available
cool.
to anybody who wants to tell it. Oh, and by the way, if you want an exercise where you tell the story, the system will then come back and say, "Hey, here's some ways that you could maybe tighten it up or make it a little stronger, or maybe add some color to your language." So the whole thing is designed to help sales counselors get out of that business of speaking in bullet points and brochure statements and focus more on the stories of real people experiencing this fabulous product that we offer.
Man, that's awesome. That's so
Yeah, it's
cool.
pretty cool.
What an innovative, that's one of the best innovative features I've heard in a long time. I love that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
my baby.
yeah. You've also chosen to partner with other sales coaches, even your competitors, to bring this tool to market. Why share it instead of gatekeep it?
So Next Step Sales Management has always had a niche within senior living. We have a pretty small footprint. And when I was distracted on my vacation by this, one of the things that it occurred to me was this is going to be bigger than me. In fact, this ought to be bigger than me. I think this has the capacity to change how senior living overall presents itself to prospects. And I chose to not hold that under our umbrella or to use it as a club to try to win more business. To me, it's a tool that is independent of our sales language, it's independent of our sales methodology. It can reinforce if you're an organization that has your own homegrown way of getting things done. Well, we can build your metrics or your language into the system. But, people like Grow Your Occupancy, Julie Podowitz, who is a very, very good sales trainer, we feel like, say Grow also has clients that could benefit from this and they can load their playbook into it. And so I feel like that's just an important thing. So if you're in this business of helping seniors get great service from sales counselors or executive directors or directors of nursing, you can use this as a way to help your team do what you want them to do better, independently of using, the specific language that I train and teach.
Yeah. You're a SaaS business and a sales business at that point, right? That's very similar to us. We're in the process of developing custom CRMs for our clients. So we're building software that they can utilize that's custom built for them. But then regardless if they use us for marketing or not, we can just market and sell that piece of software because it's built specifically for the industry. So yeah, I love that. That's the best way to reach more people.
Well, I think one of the things that the experts on the AI side will say, if I wish to use AI, get more specific. What problem do I wish to solve? and what are some of the tools I could bring to bear to solve that specific problem. And we felt like sales counselors had a very specific problem of not practicing until the stakes were very high. And so this is a problem solver for that very specific arena. It turns out if you get that right, that application also is very valuable to an executive director having a conversation with a family about it being time to move to memory care from independent living. It's also very helpful for a director of nursing to walk a family through their specific issues on their assessment. So we have an operational focus that we can bring to a studio too. It's not just for sales counselors, it's really any crucial conversation.
I was going to ask you that. Were there other people within the senior living team that would benefit from utilizing a tool like this?
So yes, certainly each member of the team that has prospect or family facing conversations, we have a mini module just for the receptionist or concierge that's
Very
just
cool.
focused on how do you receive this call? How do you get it transferred with an endorsement and with a reason why it's going to be a good idea to talk to the person you're transferring. So that's a very specific point. We recommend multiple users per community. We don't charge by the seat. We charge by the community specifically to encourage communities to use the system as it suits them. And the other area we're developing now is the management side. So the personas are no longer prospects. The personas are sales counselors who are struggling. And how do you support them as a coach and as a leader in their growth? And so the management module is one that is under development that I'm very, very excited about too.
That's so cool. I love what you're doing. Looking forward to, you've seen this industry evolve for the last 2 decades. What worries you about where sales is headed and what gives you hope?
I'll start with hope. We are supporting humans doing what humans do best. I'm not interested in making a decision like this based on a back and forth with a chatbot. I want to look someone in the eye, I want to shake their hand, I want to get a hug when I'm making a big decision like this. And I don't think we're ever going to remove the value of that hug. And so supporting sales counselors in that role that allows them to be fully prepared and fully present and to really serve the needs of these people who require us to be at our best. I'm very hopeful that we have emerging tools, emerging practices, emerging metrics that all support that. The fear side, we run the risk of this being overwhelmed by data and being overwhelmed by metrics and taking our eye off the ball and focusing perhaps on metrics that don't serve our interests. We run the risk of assigning too much weight to things that are external to the role of a sales counselor. And I am that's why our focus is really on sales counselor performance. I don't position us as a lead generation organization. Beyond building out your referral network, we stay away from that. There are other people who are very, very good at it, like you. But in our arena, I want sales counselors to be the very, very best they can be. And I don't want a lot of distraction. I want to really focus on that. So I worry sometimes about organizations getting distracted by externalities and losing track of what's really important from my perspective.
Do you see the way people search changing? For example, people used to look at 2 to 3 communities when they were looking for a solution for senior living, and now they're looking at 5 to 7 communities. I mean, do you foresee any kind of changes as to how that's going to impact the sales process or the sales cycle, or how people can engage with prospects in the future?
Well, I would say it puts it on the shoulders of a sales counselor to take enough time to become the subject matter expert in your market. If you're
Yeah.
unaware of what your partners in success, I don't really even view the other community as a competitor as much as I view them as a partner in the market, because typically, and even more so coming up, we'll have plenty of residents. It's a matter of which of those are we positioned to best serve. And if it's not us, okay, well, who would be the appropriate resource? If sales counselors haven't taken the time to make those recommendations, then they're not in a position to be a trusted advisor or a subject matter expert. And I view that as very important. Um, if if the only resource someone uses is what they can find on Google, well, you're not of great value. You should be able to say not only here's what you will find on Google, but here's my friend who works there in this role. Given what we've learned today, I would definitely recommend you speak with them. I will connect you. And now you're a reciprocal referral partner. You're not just someone saying, oh, I don't know. I don't know anything about them. Or, oh, yeah, they're new. That's not sufficient. I mean, sales counselors, if we're going to do this job well, we've got to know who else is operating in our market, and not just at specifically our level, but who are the alternatives perhaps for home care or at a higher level of care.
John, thank you so much for sharing so much insight into this product and service. I mean, I love this. I think it's going to change the industry. How can listeners connect with you or learn more about the Senior Living Sales Practice Studio?
So nextstepsalesmanagement.com is our website, and the studio is prominent on that site. I can also be reached at J Greaves, Greav as in Victor ES, at nextstepsalesmanagement.com. From our website, you can hit my Calendly link and schedule an appointment. I'm happy to demonstrate the system. If you're not interested in using the Next Step Sales Management language or our forecasting system, that's perfectly fine. We're still happy to walk you through what the system looks like using whatever language you choose to use.
Awesome. We'll make sure we include all that in the show notes for you. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to extend a huge thank you to John Greaves for joining us and offering one of the most innovative, grounded, and thoughtful takes on sales training I've heard in a long time. John, your work is helping teams prepare, practice, and perform at a higher level, and your integrity in building tools that don't just train but transform is something our industry needs more of. If you want to learn more about the Senior Living Sales Practice Studio or connect directly with John, all the links are in the show notes. As always, we hope you found this episode insightful and inspiring, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore the evolving world of senior care, covering everything from innovative care models and leadership strategies to family support, technology, and the future of aging. Also, remember that From Leads to Leases isn't just an audio experience. We're also a video podcast. So if you want to see the video versions of our episodes like the one here with John, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify channels. I'm Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth. Thanks for joining us on From Leads to Leases. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who might find it useful. I'm truly grateful for your time and attention. And until next time, lead with strategy and with heart. Chat with you again soon. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks for listening to From Leads to Leases. Are you ready to fill your rooms faster and increase occupancy? Visit ccrgrowth.com to learn about our Senior Growth Innovation Suite, a proven system to generate highly qualified, tour-ready leads, accelerate sales, and reduce acquisition costs. Let's connect and turn your challenges into opportunities. See you next time.